Welcome back to Talk the Wolf. With us now is Security Secretary Chris Tang. He joins us to talk about the Security Bureau's new missions in the Chief Executive's policy address. Thank you very much, Secretary, for sitting down with us. Now, I would like to talk about cybersecurity, which is part of the priorities in the Chief Executive's policies address. Now, your Bureau has been tasked with spearheading the so-called smart enforcement that's inside the policy address. That includes using more technologies to solve crime and to gather intelligence. At the meantime, the Chief Executive said Hong Kong must beef up its cybersecurity infrastructure. So my question is, how do you make sure as Security Chief that cyber threats do not outpace our security safeguards and thus public safety?
All right. First of all, I would like to talk a little bit about use of technology. It's not just for enforcement; it's also for the convenience of the peoples of Hong Kong. So not just too much focusing on law enforcement. Of course, yes, we do enforce law, but we also provide a lot of services to the people of Hong Kong.
A big part of the smart city initiative.
All right. Yes. All right. Going back to your questions about the cyber security law, right? So the reason why we would like to introduce such a law, it's first of all, when we look at our critical infrastructure, in particular critical information infrastructure, nowadays we're relying a lot about use of critical cyber information, and overall the world we do suffer from a lot of such kind of attack towards critical information structures, right? So I just cite a few examples. What happened this year in the United States, where the Colonial Pipeline, they're being extorted by the criminals by jamming their operation through attacking to their cyber security.
Yeah. That was done by Russian hackers, though. So in terms of I think the United States, I think President Joe Biden actually met with President Putin and telling them, Russian state-sponsored hackers need to back out from our cyber infrastructure. Is there any countries that was on Hong Kong's mind that might be the prime opponents in cybercrime?
I think no one is immune from cyber attack. Cyber attack, it can be criminal intended, just like extortion, getting money, and it can be also doing harm to national security. So you just think about what happened if our power supply has been jammed because of the cyber attack. So it will cause, it's not just inconvenience to the livelihood of people, it also cause harm to national security. So that's the reason why we need to safeguard those critical information structure.
How do you make sure that you stay one step ahead of cyber threats?
So that's the reason why, apart from our law enforcement effort, we also need the cooperation from the corporation. So just like in how to build in a robust preventive system, and how to do threat assessment, and then how to do drills, and in case of anything's happen, how to report. So that's all important.
Is targeting fake news on social media also part of that directive to safeguard cyber environment?
Oh, I think you're talking about two things. The first thing is about critical information structure, right? And you now turn to another point, you talk about fake news, right?
So this is separate things?
Separate, of course, it's separate things. This cybersecurity law is mainly governing like the corporate level of a cyber attack.
Okay.
And what you mentioned about fake news is other issues.
Okay. Despite being another issue, I know that you've been saying that your bureau, the Security Bureau, has been assisting the Home Affairs Bureau in researching overseas legislation to crack down on fake news. Can you give us an update on the progress of your work?
I think, as you rightly point out, that its main bureau, it's the Home Affairs Bureau. We provide full support to that.
So no updates on the
probably
latest?
You have to ask the Home Affairs Bureau.
Well, how big actually is the role of the Security Bureau in this whole thing, and what else are you doing to crack down on fake news?
I think sometimes on some issues it may be every bureau may play a part to do it, but we have to have a leading bureau. So it doesn't mean that we have nothing to do. Of course, eventually if there's a law, probably we need to have it enforced.
Okay. In terms of overseas legislation, we know that Singapore has its anti-fake news law, And then I'm just putting forward some ideas here. Like Philippines, they introduced the cyber libel offense in 2012 that could criminalize certain online content. Will a similar law here in Hong Kong answer the call of the chief executive?
So probably I will refer your comments to the Home Affairs Bureau.
Okay, thank you about that. Okay, how do you convince people that the government is not weaponizing the campaign against fake news to arbitrarily ramp up censorship?
I think people of Hong Kong can see clearly how fake news can harm the society. I mean, like starting from 2019, there a planned planting of fake news. For example, they talk about massive killing on the Prince Edward MTR station on the 31st of August. And they talk about sexual abuse at Sun Oak Lang Detention Center, which are all fake news. But those allegations, those fake news do cause people, to incite the hatred against the government and the law enforcement, which cause a lot of subsequent disturbances to Hong Kong. I think people of Hong Kong see it clearly.
All right.
Let's switch gears and talk about immigration and border control for a moment. I'd like to talk about the Greater Bay Area endorsement visa. Is there anything you can tell us about that? Who will benefit, and what's so special about it?
All right. So the basic purpose of that initiative is to facilitate those non-Chinese people living in Hong Kong, either they are Hong Kong residents or not, either they are permanent residents or not. They can have a easier traveling to the mainland China for like business, for conferencing, or for other purposes. I mean, for the time being, probably they have to get a visa, on every single occasion. But we're trying to have it simplified. We're trying to work with the relevant mainland authorities to see whether it can be simplified. For example, a visa for a longer period of time.
I think for people who might be interested in moving there, they might want to know how big of a part is China going to, or mainland authorities, mainland laws are going to be part of this, and how much of Hong Kong. So can you tell us more about that?
In fact, I think we're discussing about the details of the program. So the whole idea of the program is to facilitate the talent move around between our boundary within the Greater Bay Area.
Okay, so your predecessor, John Lee, has backed an advanced passenger information system. Will you be adding any more to that provision?
I mean, first of all, you have to know about what is the advanced passenger system. This is in compilation with the Convention of the International Aviation Security. So, I mean, this is, we have to compile the international standard that we have to have the advanced passengers list. So the reason is we have to know who is coming, and if there's anyone that probably we won't allow them to come in, they should not be bought the plane anyway. So this is only inbound. There's nothing to do with outbound. And I understand that, someone is trying to smear the government, saying that we're trying to prevent people leaving Hong Kong, which is absolutely wrong and misleading, and it's only trying to smear the government.
So why is it needed?
As I said, because this is international standard. If they block the plane, and in fact they cannot enter the country or the city, then they shouldn't be allowed to board the plane in the first place. So this is international standard.
I believe one of the reasons that was also mentioned was fake illegal immigrants. Is this an issue that's very rampant in Hong Kong?
I mean, you have rightly pointed out that the reason why this is such an international standard is that some people that you are not allowed to allow them to go in. For example, they're trying just to seek refoulement, and they have no legal status to remain in Hong Kong. Then we should not allow them to come in the first place.
So what happened to those who are allowed to leave Hong Kong, but when they come back, are everyone who's allowed to leave Hong Kong are allowed to be board on the commercial flights inbound coming back to Hong Kong?
I mean, any Hong Kong permanent residents, they have a right to land Hong Kong, and they have a right to come back to Hong Kong.
I would now like to talk about Tung Kai. There have been reports that he has left his safe house, and what is the Security Bureau doing about that? Are you keeping track of him? And how can you assure the people of Hong Kong that they are safe?
I think whether someone is being admitted into the witness protection program because of operational reasons, we cannot confirm or to whether he's in a program or not. I think for him, he has served his sentence in Hong Kong, and if anyone, unless they are being detained, they are free to move around in Hong Kong.
But I mean, he's walking around Hong Kong. People in Hong Kong are worried, and they're probably also angry that he has said that he is willing to go back to Taiwan, and it has not happened yet.
Yeah, I mean, people, as I said, if they have served their sentence in Hong Kong and they are free to move around, right? I mean, we have a lot of previous people, they have committed serious crime, for example, homicide and murder, and after that they serve their sentence. They are free to move around in Hong Kong. And in Tung Kai's case, I've noticed that he has intention to return to Taiwan and then to face the legal proceedings. I think with that intention, I think for the time being, the difficulties is Taiwan do not allow him to return to Taiwan to face his legal proceeding. It's all because of political manipulation.
Is Hong Kong's government hands tied in this situation?
I mean, the whole crux of the issue is very simple. If Taiwan allowed him to go back to Taiwan, and it solved the problem, because the incidents happened in Taiwan, the evidence is there, the surveillance camera is there, forensic examination is there, everything is there, and yet Tung Kai has show his intention to admit to the incidents. I think it's very simple. Just allow him to go.
Will the Hong Kong government reach out to Taiwan or arrange anything?
I mean, this is a sole decision by Taiwan whether they will allow him to go or not. The whole crux of the issue is on Taiwan.
All right, I'll let you wrap up this interview by asking you this one last question. So your successor, Police Commissioner Raymond Siu, has been watching his interviews. He's been saying that the police force has been working very hard to restore public image and trying to promote, the public impression of law enforcement officer. But when responding to the campaign against to regulate fake news and misinformation, he also said that no one should talk about free speech or no one should talk about freedom if they violate the law. How do you plan on getting more people, more young people especially, to obey the law if you don't guarantee their freedoms?
I think their freedoms are guaranteed. Everyone have their freedom, but freedom has a limit.
Yes.
You should not commit crime, right? You should not infringe the freedom of others. I think this is the whole idea of how we should build in the law-abidingness of our people, in particular the youth. Because in the past, some people will tell them that as long as you think that something is right, you do whatever you want, even if it is illegal. And sometimes even use of violence is a means of solving problem, which is absolutely wrong. So that's the reason why we have to rebuild the sense of abidingness. And yet, I think their sense of identity of being a Chinese is important as well.
So is it fair to say that when drafting the Article 23 legislation, when drafting possible anti-fake news law in Hong Kong, the law will be clear, will be distinct, will be very succinct, so people in Hong Kong will know that where's the red line, and they will know when not to cross it?
I think law must be clear.
There's a yes.
Of course.
Okay.
Law must be clear so that people will know what is the limit of the law.
And the punishment will be proportionate as well.
Of course.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Secretary, for talking with us. Appreciate you coming on the show.